All right. So, welcome everybody to the Get Haunted Paranormal Town Hall. For those of you who have not been involved in a town hall before, this is a kind of an open discussion for us to talk about the topic of the month. And this month's topic is protection, specifically protection while ghost hunting. So, we have a very special guest to help us out with that tonight, Dustin Crowley. He's been investigating for 15 years. He's the president of Great State Paranormal in North Carolina. He is a ordained minister with specializations in demonology and exorcisms. So he's kind of an expert. Well, as close as an expert can get in this field. So take it away, Dustin.
Thanks, Bill. And yeah, to kind of piggyback on that last part, as close to an expert as you can get in this field. It's a big thing, and I want to start with that little caveat that just because something I talk about tonight works for me and my team does not mean it works for you. And just because something does not work for me doesn't mean it can't work for you. There's a lot of different things that work within different spiritual beliefs and practices. So it's a big open space, but hopefully we can just kind of talk about some of the high points and just kind of how that works and keeping us safe. Because as a lot of people can probably attest, if you don't keep yourself safe when you're interacting with the spirit realm, it can lead to some, we'll just call it sleepless nights. So before I get into keeping yourself safe during an investigation, I think is probably just as important to start with before an investigation. So prior to an investigation, a couple of things that I try to do to keep myself and my team safe would be one, setting up a ward around a home. So if you're not familiar with that practice, it's basically just setting up barriers that keep negative entities and energies away from the home. So there's a couple of common ways that it's done. You can do it by putting up religious relics. You can do it by using salt or black salt to go around the outside of your property. Crystal grids. There's a ton of different ways to do it. Personally, I have my own black salt, and I use that just a little bit around the perimeter of my home. One small note is you do want to be careful if you're using salt because it will kill any type of vegetation. So if you put salt in your flower beds, your flowers will die. So be very careful with that. The next major thing I do, and I encourage my team to do, is to do what's called shadow work. I know some of you have probably already heard me give a similar training on working within the shadow. But that basically kind of goes down to the psychologist Carl Jung and his thinking on how we all have our own shadow side of ourselves, this darker side that we don't want to take out into the light, that we don't want to expose to other people. So that can be things such as our fears, our insecurities, past traumas. And working through shadow work, it's really beneficial because you understand what can set you off, what can be your triggers. So if an entity were to talk about certain things to me, I know that it's trying to get to me. And there's a ton of ways you can do that. There are different journaling techniques, writing prompts, but I think probably the most effective, and this was not planned and it is in no way an endorsement, but it's just used like tarot or oracle cards. You can just sit down. Most decks have 52 cards. You can pull one out. So in this case, I just pulled the movement card, and that's not going to go in focus, but movement. What can this mean to me? Am I scared to move? Am I scared to relocate? What type of insecurities might I have? Why do I have them? And now you have a log of everything that you're working on. And then that kind of also goes into the last thing we kind of do before an investigation, which is really just focusing on meditation. So with meditation, a lot of times people kind of think it's, I'm just going to sit and not think about anything, and I'm going to have a clear mind. But when I focus on meditation, it's focusing directly on a certain task, or reviewing on my day, what went good, what went bad, what lessons can I learn. And learning to focus your intent is a really important power and a really important skill, especially when you're going out into an investigation. Because when you interact, your intention is going to be key to the spirit realm and what type of evidence you get that night, and how they can or cannot interact with you or any other member of your team or anything like that. So really just learning to set your intentions and focus all of your heart, your mind, and your soul on a singular topic is a really big part of spiritual protection. So once you've got everything kind of taken care of at home beforehand, when we go into the actual field and we're actually going on an investigation, going to a ghost hunt, what do you do to keep yourself safe? So the first thing that I always do, and if you guys ever go on an event with us or work an investigation or an event, we always do grounding. And that's just really important because usually when we go on an investigation, it's usually at night, whether it's a Friday or a Saturday. We've got all this junk going on throughout the week. You know, work sucks. I've got issues with my pets, my significant other. I might have some issues going on with my family, people's health. And if you've got all of that going on, you're not going to be able to, one, focus on the evidence that you might collect that night, but two, you're not going to be able to focus your intent on keeping yourself safe. So I always just walk us through a quick little guided meditation, just working on breathing in and breathing out, taking note of how do I feel? How does it feel with my heartbeat pumping blood throughout all of my veins, the wind on your skin? Just taking note of all of your senses, and then connecting yourself down into the earth, imagining yourself as like a giant oak tree or a red oak or whatever type of tree might be more relevant to you guys wherever you are in the country. Because a lot like a huge giant tree, their roots are planted deep into the ground, and that keeps them safe. But up above ground, their leaves block them from the sun. And while they're big and they're strong, they sway and they move. And there's something really significant and powerful in also understanding that even though we might be strong and we might have up our barriers, there's always going to come a time and a place where maybe we have to bend and sway and be a little bit flexible. So once we ground, we also take the time to put up an energy shield. So a lot of people talk about doing this kind of thing, whether it's putting yourself in a bubble of white light or an egg of white light, a cocoon, whatever phrase or shape you choose. We kind of walk through doing that. The easy way for me to kind of do it after we go through the guided meditation and you're envisioning yourself kind of like that giant tree is to pull white light and white protection up from the earth and from the ground. Feel it go up through you as a tree, through your branches, if you will. And then to just let that light fall down to the ground, encasing you. And again, you guys might have another way that works for you, but for me and for my team, that's how we do it. But the important part is that you have that pureness, that clean energy around you. Because a lot of times, unless it's a very strong, dark, negative entity, if it has to go through a bunch of white light, it's going to go to someone else, something else. It's basically going to choose the path of least resistance. And so keeping yourself as secure as possible is going to really help, especially if you're in a big group, because as we can kind of all attest to, not everyone takes spiritual protection the same way as everyone else. So in a sense, it's almost like every man for themselves when you're out in the field. But with a team, you have to know that your team's doing everything they can that they should do. So they can have your back if something goes down, and you can have their back. It's all built on trust. So after we have grounded ourselves and we've put up our shields, the next thing that we do, and it can kind of differ from person to person. A lot of people will have some type of a sacred relic that they bring with them. So some common examples: rosaries, prayer beads, pentacles, triple moon necklaces, a lot of different things. For me personally, I always bring this labradorite ring with me, and it helps to keep my spiritual sensitivities as high as they can and keep me in tune, because especially on my investigations with my team, I'm kind of the protector of my group. So something might kind of go after one of my team members, but so long as I'm there, it won't be able to get to them because it'll know it has to kind of go through me first. And sometimes we found that it tries to pull me away from the group. So that's always kind of a red flag for us, is if someone's like, hey, Dustin, you need to go to this other room, or hey, can you come look at this with me? It's always kind of like, okay, yeah, I'll stay here. You can bring it to me or tell me what you need to, but I probably need to stay here if you're trying to get me to go there. And that also kind of goes back to shadow work, knowing yourself, knowing your triggers, and kind of knowing how things can interact with you to mess with you on an investigation. The next thing that we kind of use to help keep ourselves safe would be some blessed oils. So I personally just buy protection oil because I'm lazy / busy. I don't have a lot of time to make my own because I don't have time to find high quality oil to source really good ingredients to use. In my case, the Asheville Raven and Chrome, which is just about 40 minutes away, they make a really good product, and I've used it in the past, I've tested it, and so I just buy it. But for you, that might look different. I also use holy anointing oil, which is just basically the same oil that's used from the book of Exodus. So it's very heavy on olive oil and cinnamon and a couple of things I can't remember. But I've also kind of found using that in the field, cinnamon can be an irritant to skin. And so I've used it to put, crosses on people's foreheads, and then found out that they're reactive to cinnamon. And now for the rest of the night, they have to walk around with a huge red, glowing cross on their forehead, which is not really ideal. So kind of know what works for you, test out a few things, and see what might be best in your case and in your situation. We also use blessed waters. So in my case, I make holy water as an ordained minister. I can make a batch more or less anytime it's needed. So I make sure that my team and I always have it on hand. I know I've supplied it to a couple other people I've investigated with in the past, but using holy water might not be in line with like your traditions. You might use full moon water, for example, or new moon water. So it's all kind of just knowing what works for you. But with the oils and the waters, those are really important because you, in a sense, anoint yourself. And it's in almost every tradition that I've studied, at least, always seen as a way of like washing away impurities, sanctifying yourself, setting yourself apart for a special task. And so when we go into the field and we're interacting with different things, we always want to make sure that we take all of that baggage and leave it at the door to make sure that when we're investigating, we are as secure as possible. So as we get into investigating, all of the stuff I just said is usually something we do like right before, and then we're like, all right, great, let's go. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Ghost, knock 2 times for a yes and 1 time for a no, and tell us that you're here. And that might work really good from 8 until 1 a.m. But if something happens at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3, 4, 5, whatever time, you have to kind of know what to do in the moment. So what we would do is if someone's been affected by like a spirit or an entity, it's usually pretty easy to tell. If you haven't been around before, they usually will feel the emotions that that spirit might have felt. So overwhelming joy, sadness, depression, and they'll feel all of these heavy emotions all at once. So you might have someone that just for no reason breaks down crying, or a spirit might actually physically attack you in a very rare circumstance, and so you might get scratched. So in a case like that, it's really important to take yourself or that other person, remove them from the building, and if possible, get them onto an actual piece of earth, whether that's dirt or grass or whatever. It could be asphalt, it could be concrete, because a lot of times at these bigger locations like an asylum, a prison, it might be kind of hard to get to actual earth, but as close to that as you can get. And then go back through the same grounding exercises that you did beforehand. Recenter yourself, recollect all of your thoughts, and just take a moment. I've also found in the past that if you're a smoker, it usually helps to smoke a cigarette. I don't smoke, but to each their own. And so if you've been affected or you're helping someone who's been, once you take the steps that you need to recenter yourself, it's usually a good idea to re-anoint with the oils or the blessed waters, and then slowly go back into the investigation. Now, once everything is ended, when the nights finally come down to a close, a couple of things are really key. Number 1, make sure that out loud, verbally say, you cannot go home with me. You can't attach yourself to me, any of my tools, my equipment, none of my teammates. You cannot go with me. You don't have to stay here. We don't really care where you go, but you don't go with me. And then I usually do a smoke cleansing. So I use Palo Santo just because it's small, it's easy to use, and it goes out pretty quick. And I will just take that, starting from the top, working all the way down to the bottom, and just use that smoke to almost like wash over me, wash over my team. And then after we've used the smoke to cleanse, we'll go home. When we get home, we will clean all of our equipment with smoke, or sometimes we'll clean it with salt. especially if you think about the piece of equipment you have. Like if you have copper dowsing rods, salt or earth is probably going to be best to help pull out that energy that might have been left over from the investigation than sage or palo santo or rosemary or whatever type of smoke you might use. So you cleanse your tools, you cleanse yourself, and then if need be, if let's say you were on a very intense night, it might be a good idea to smoke cleanse your home and to re-up any of those wards that you might have set up. So add another layer of salt around your home, recharge your crystals, whatever the case may be. And I think ultimately, knowing who you can also reach out to is another big key of keeping yourself safe. So I have a couple connections here locally where if I go and I investigate a location and I might be getting affected, I can come home and I can call them up and I can say, hey, Jackie, hey, Courtney, I'm having some issues. Can y'all come over? And I know that I've got some people here locally that can come and help get anything recentered or rebalanced if needed. So I know I kind of flew past a lot of topics. And there's a ton of room for discussion within just spiritual protection as a whole. But do you guys have any questions or concerns or examples?
I actually have a question. In leading groups, I mean, I just don't feel like I'm qualified or have the knowledge to properly teach people, like, to picture the white light. I myself close my eyes. I can't picture this. I see darkness. What would you suggest, or how would I, what would be the best way to approach that? What would be your thoughts?
So this was really challenging for me starting out. For probably 10 years of investigating, I could not do this. Not even just like walk people through it. I couldn't do it.
Right, exactly.
And so, kind of like what I said earlier, just because something works for one person or one group doesn't necessarily mean it can work for you. That's not saying that you can't get there. I did. It just takes a lot of focus. What I found that helped me personally was meditating. Specifically, like a guided meditation. There are a couple really good ones that you can find through Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. Okay. And what you're going to want to probably look for is one that's super descriptive. So maybe something that guides you through meditating and you're taking a walk on a beach, or it's taking you through a walk through like a flower bed or a forest. Something that you can just almost readily picture in your mind. And that's going to really help to kind of unlock your mind's eye or your third eye. And then once you've kind of got used to walking through something that's familiar, you can kind of take it to those more abstract ideas. But again, it takes a long time, in my opinion, to kind of get there.
Okay.
Yeah, I struggle with a lot of that too. Guided meditations have helped me a lot. I've actually made it a New Year's resolution of mine to try to meditate every day so I could get better at it. I'm still using guided meditations because I have a really hard time doing it without that. I need something to kind of guide me through it. But
okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones on YouTube. Is usually the ones I find.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I would say too, when it comes to meditation, set the mood. So that might mean lighting some incense, dimming your lights, putting up your animals, burning some candles, but don't just do it at random. If you're going to do something that's like taking a walk on the beach, maybe burn sandalwood, because sandalwood usually has a strong beachy scent to it. Light blue candles. Maybe meditate on a beach towel. Kind of work within that theme, because the more it kind of matches you around yourself, the easier it'll kind of be to imagine that in your mind.
Yeah, and one thing I found with that is doing different guided meditations at different times of the day, just like experimenting a little bit, especially on days where you're not going to be doing an investigation, just to see what kind of resonates with you and works the best. Like when I started doing this meditation every day, I tried in my living room, my bedroom, in the morning, at night, and during a shower, on a hike. Actually, on a hike is when it's best for me, but I can't always do that, especially this time of year. But yeah, I'm just experimenting with different things, see what works best, what helps me the most.
Something I would like to add about meditation, if I may. I personally have found my best meditation to occur when I'm out in nature, kind of what Bill was saying, like a hike or near water, or actually really close to water. I personally cannot meditate in my own home. I have to be away from here to effectively meditate. There's always too much going on. Earlier, you guys probably saw my roommate and his girlfriend walking in and out of the room. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to focus, and I can't do this when you guys are around. But meditation doesn't have to be, for me, in the house. It can be anywhere, even if it's on a long car ride by yourself, if you can find the time to do that.
Yeah, I don't like doing it on car rides, just in case.
Please don't
Unless
do it
I'm a
with your eyes
passenger.
closed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, if I'm driving, I don't think that would be a good thing. Not enough I zone out when I drive.
I should clarify, it should be a nice long highway and not a lot of traffic, and just something peaceful, and pay attention to the road, please.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're really going to be meditating for a long time.
So I'm curious, what are some of the things that the rest of y'all bring with you on investigation, help protect you? I know I typically have either my prayer beads, or I have a couple pieces of amethyst or a rosary or something. But what do you guys have?
I carry an assortment of stones, a lot of black obsidian, a lot of clear quartz as well. I also have a ring with the Our Father prayer on it, and a gift from my father, which is a gold cross and chain. This is my personal favorite. Um, and then somebody made me a pocket rosary one time that I carry with me, usually.
Yeah, I usually have a pocket rosary with me, and I'm always wearing all kinds of crystals. I've got quartz, I've got the black tourmaline, hematite. I have all different kinds of stones in bracelets, and I wear that all the time when investigating.
I like black tourmaline a lot. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
do
have-
have also some Florida water, and I think it's Archangel Michael. They're both sprays. And I actually used the Florida water on a guest one time because he was having issues with the spirit at White Hill Mansion. And we finally got him outside and sprayed him with Florida water. So I always have that in my bag.
Yeah, I never really thought about bringing water with me, but I have a jar of moon water upstairs. Might put that in a smaller container and bring it with me.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, something that I've done in the past is with moon water. I put it in like its own special spray bottle, like the kind that you'd spray like a plant with or some kind of cleanser with.
Mhm.
And I've sprayed not necessarily equipment, but like clothing and that kind of a thing. I find that to be super effective if you have moon water.
Yeah. Speaking of equipment, I tend to keep a few crystals in my boxes that I keep my equipment in, just so that they're always there with them.
I do that as well.
That's a great idea. I have plenty. I'm gonna have to start throwing them into cases.
I guess I like to live dangerously because I really don't do a whole lot. Once I do have a cross that because then I'm thinking like, I went on a location where I was there for 2 nights. First night I had big crosses and stuff on, and I'm like, it wasn't really all that active. And then second night I'm like, screw it, I'm going to see what happens. Didn't wear anything and it was more active. So in my mind, I'm like, especially if I have a group of people, it's like, am I pushing spirits away? Are they not going to really? I know the thing is you don't want them to come home, but I don't know.
So I think it's
I probably
interesting.
should do something, I'm sure.
So kind of to piggyback off of that idea of like, maybe I'm too safe and they can't interact. In my experience, no matter how much protection I put up, if you give the spirit a method to interact with, as long as they have the energy capable, they will still come through. I've been on a location before and I had to exercise the building halfway through an event. And even after doing that, we were still able to get intelligent responses throughout the night. We didn't get any more of the dark entity that night, but we still got communication. So within reason, I mean, if everyone goes through and exercises a building, assuming you've got multiple exorcists on your team, that might completely drive everyone away. But as long as you're not going in with the intent that absolutely nothing is allowed to talk to me, they're still going to be able to come through.
Okay.
Yeah, and intent is everything. Like once I started kind of getting into the Wiccan stuff and the magic and all that, one thing that's kind of put to the forefront of it is intent is everything. It almost doesn't matter what you do, as long as your intentions are there, you can kind of make anything work for you.
Bill, I'd like to add to that if I may. I do believe what you said about intent is completely true. Like I intend for my sage smoke to cleanse everything. And if I don't have that intention in myself, then it's not going to do a whole lot of good, in my opinion. So intention truly is the cornerstone of a lot of protection pieces or protective rituals.
Yeah, just my own personal belief is even beyond protection. Is it doesn't matter what you believe in. It's your belief in anything that can give it the power to protect you, to help you. So whether you if you believe in God and the crucifix and all that, then that stuff will help you. If you don't, and it's not going to do anything for you. You got to use what you believe in, because that's what gives you the power to be protected.
Completely agree. Like I said, kind of from the outset, even with me being as much of an expert as I probably can be within the field, there's always a ton that I can learn. And as I study more and more and more different systems of faith, what I find is there's so many common themes within, not just the Abrahamic, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, but even when you get into more of your pagan faiths, there's so much that they have in common. And especially when it comes to like the spiritual things, rituals, keeping yourself safe. I mean, I'm sure that has a little bit to do with Christianity. We'll just call it plagiarizing a lot of pagan traditions and cultures, but still.
That's a very politically correct way to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it kind of is amazing just how much that all the different religions, pagan, Abrahamic, Buddhist, Hindu, that they're all basically the same when you really dig down into it. that they have different gods and different prayers and all that, but the bottom line is still the same for the most part.
Something I do after an investigation is any article that was present with me during the investigation, whether it's my watch or my rings or my cross or anything like that, that gets cleansed when I get home. And any clothing I do not wear again until it's been properly laundered. And I also sage my car whenever I'm done with an investigation as well.
That kind of makes me think of something else. If I'm working with someone who's been heavily affected on an event, one thing I'll have them do is as soon as they get home or back to their hotel or whatever, before you go to bed, take a shower, wash yourself clean. And I've found in the past that has also been pretty effective.
As much as I would love to do that, a lot of times that's just not physically possible. Because I get into the house and it's all I can do to get to my bed before I just kind of fall over and I'm asleep. Especially when I have an investigation that's a couple hours away and I didn't get a hotel room because I'm cheap. And so I'm there till 3, 4 in the morning, and then I got a 2-hour drive, and yeah, that's not fun. I'm trying not to do that anymore.
Yeah, I think we've all been there at least once or twice.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you guys do a lot more after investigations than I do. I mean, prior to an investigation, I'll meditate, I'll set my intentions, and I bring stuff with me during an investigation. And if I have any, feelings during an investigation that things aren't quite right, I'll take a few minutes and sit down and meditate again and try to surround myself with a protective barrier. But then when I leave, I go home, I go to bed. Like I don't typically cleanse my equipment other than having the crystals in the cases with them. But I take a shower sometime the next day after I wake up, and but I don't do any kind of cleansings with Palo Santo or sage or anything unless I feel I need to. But that's been a rare occasion when I felt I needed to do that.
I mean, that makes sense. And that might just be a good system for you based on what you've kind of used to help build up those barriers around yourself. So that's not to say that you couldn't do more.
Oh, you could always do more.
I mean, I don't think you're ever safe enough.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I've been lucky so far that nothing has really ever came home with me. Knock on wood. And of course, that just woke up my dogs.
and that's lucky. We've had something go home with us. I'm sure my fiance would disagree. Or maybe he wouldn't disagree. He would just disagree when I say it's his fault. But
yeah, he would disagree with that.
But even having something follow us home, not the end of the world, it moved some dog food, allegedly. And then, just saged a little bit, and okay, we're good.
Yeah, I know a few people who have had things follow them home, and for most of them, after 2, 3, 4 days, it kind of left on its own. It almost seemed more like a little residual energy was attached to them, and it kind of faded over a few days. So it really wasn't anything to worry about. I know that happened to Rachel, who is no longer on here. I helped her through. She had a something follow her home from an investigation once. But yeah, it can be bad for sure. I mean, I know all of us know somebody who was affected pretty badly. But it could also just be nothing really, little minor inconvenience and goes away on its own.
Well, and I think too that has a little bit to do with like understanding where you're going. So if I know I'm going to an asylum, that might change a little bit about how I prepared to protect myself than if I went to a prison, than if I went to like the Conjuring house. Knowing the type of energy and the type of experiences other people have had can really be very helpful and beneficial in kind of planning out how you're going to investigate, what you're going to do, maybe even who on your team is going to do what.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've never had anything follow me home. I know my fiance Tanya has, and you mentioning the Conjuring house reminded me of it because she brought a couple dolls with her. One was a Haitian doll that was her mother got from a voodoo priestess that was supposed to be for protection, and because we were going to the Conjuring house, she brought that with her, and she brought it into the house with her. And when we got back, for about 3 or 4 days after we got back, her kids heard a lot of footsteps in the room that the dolls were in. Now, granted, they hear footsteps and voices in that house all the time. It's a haunted house for sure. But yeah, specifically, it was around those dolls for a few days, and then it kind of dissipated. Yeah, if you're gonna bring something home, that's not a place you want to bring it home from.
No,
Mm-mm.
couldn't say it would be. So does anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns, any other topics they'd like to throw into the group?
Something I do, and it's nothing really special, but I think it helps a lot, is natural sunlight coming into your home, like on a nice sunny day, or even like an overcast kind of a day. I open up all the curtains and blinds and just let the natural light come in. And I think that kind of blasts out, so to speak, some negative energy that might just be running around the house that could just come in anywhere. So anything natural for me has always worked really well. Like anything dirt or sunlight or moonlight.
Yeah, especially when the weather's nicer and you can have the windows open, not just have the sunlight, but the wind blow through, and that's
Yep.
always nice.
Just carries everything away, and the sun rays just burn out everything else.
So one other thing that I've done for kind of cleaning my own house of negative energy is get a pint glass and you fill it with a mixture of about 50% white vinegar, 50% water, and some salt, and you just kind of let it sit there, in the center of your home for a few days. And I forget where I read about it, but it's supposed to help kind of attract all the negative energies in your house, and it gets trapped within it, and then you flush it down the drain. And I've done that a few times whenever things have been going not so well in my life, and after a couple of days, and I flush that, things tend to perk up afterwards. So it's certainly something to try. Doesn't smell the
I-
greatest, but
I have never heard of that before, but I like it.
Bill, try apple cider vinegar because maybe it's a little bit better smell.
yeah, no, that's not a better smell.
Yeah, it's
I-
not.
I take apple cider vinegar in a capsule form every day, and that's a powerful smell that I don't care for.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair. Another thing that I've been doing a few times this season, something that's kind of new, is doing a simmer pot, especially in the winter months. Those are really nice to help bring some light, fresh energies and aromas into a home. So if you're not familiar, you basically just take a pot, you fill it with water, and then just whatever you want to put into it, whether you put in herbs for their scent or for some type of a metaphysical property. So maybe some orange with bay leaf and rosemary. Bring in some high energy, bright notes from the orange, protection and earthiness from the rosemary. Maybe do some cinnamon and some clove around Octoberish, November. That's another really good way to kind of help bring in, especially you're not going to open your windows and let the breeze in November, December, January, February. But you can still bring in a lot of those scents, just kind of artificially, if you will.
Yeah, I do that, but mainly for the smell more so than the cleansing. I use cinnamon and oranges, but putting rosemary in it would be really nice. Next time I do it, I'm gonna add some rosemary too. Yeah, I use a lot of rosemary and sage in a lot of the foods I make, and partly because it smells and tastes good, but also partly to just help flush anything negative out of your system.
One thing that we like to do before any investigation is we kind of feel like we like to set our intentions. So even before, if it's with guests or even if it's private, we actually like to, even before anything begins, walk through that whatever the place is and talk to the spirits and actually tell them we're here. We're not here to cause any harm. We introduce ourselves. We talk about ourselves, just kind of like setting the ground, laying the groundwork of saying we're not here to harm anybody. I don't know if that's anyone else does that, but we do it every investigation.
I do as well.
And whenever
I do that
possible,
too.
I do that.
Yeah. And if I'm with guests, I make them introduce themselves as well. So I'm sure you guys do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's only polite to the spirits.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
I always make sure to do that right after we ground. That way, before we even begin to open ourselves up to the spirits and say, hey, I'm Dustin, this is Logan, this is Jeannie, Heather, Destiny, whoever, we center ourselves, we ground, we make sure we have our barriers up, and then, hey guys, how's it going?
I'd like to add something on the investigation piece, and this is just my personal thing. Whenever I'm using equipment to speak with or otherwise communicate with spirits, I stay away from the really difficult negative questions. I ask more lighthearted things like, what's your favorite book? What's your favorite color? Instead of, you're in a penitentiary. Did you murder somebody? Did you assault somebody? I feel like asking those deep, difficult questions breeds negative energy, and it's like setting out a beacon for the negative attacks to come for you.
Well, not only that,
100% called 100%.
Yeah.
Thank you.
but asking those questions, those are the kind of questions, especially in like a penitentiary, that they get asked all the time.
Yeah.
So if you ask about their parents, their family, what do they like in commissary and things like that, not only is it more lighthearted, but it's also questions that they probably don't get very often. And so they're, in my experience, they're more likely to answer you.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
I
one
agree.
thing. If I have the opportunity to talk to the spirits beforehand, I'd tell them, I'm going to have some friends coming in. We want to get to know you, what you did in life, hobbies. Did you have hobbies? Those kind of things, and not really anything related to the specific location, but more about them and their lives. What they did, like you said, favorite color, favorite food, music. Did you like to read? Something that's not what everybody else, typically asks. I'm sure they're tired of it.
and another thing you can do to try to get more responses, and I know this is getting off the topic of protection, but um, especially when you're leading a group of people that have paid to be there, if you're getting nothing, sometimes I'll try the brutally honest approach and say, hey, spirits, these people paid a lot of money to be here to come see you. How about at least saying hi to them? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but when you're not getting anything else, it's kind of a good last ditch effort. And it's getting quiet.
Yeah, I actually got to jump, but thank you. I mean, this is great.
No, thanks, Lori.
And
Yeah, thanks for coming.
yeah, and I guess see you guys next month. But do we know topic yet?
Yes. So next month's topic is going to be a fun one. Not that this one wasn't fun, but next month will be haunted objects. So if
Ooh.
anybody has any haunted objects, feel free to bring them onto the stream with you. We will be having a camera set up with our haunted objects. They'll be in a room by themselves with their own camera,
Oh, cool.
and yeah, it should be an interesting one for sure.
All right.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dustin. This was very informative. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yes.
Yep. And to Bill's next month, we did a little experiments, right, Bill? And it was phenomenal. So this will be quite interesting
Yep.
to see this next month. So we look forward to it.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so thank you,
Yeah.
Bill. Thank you, Dustin. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Dustin. This was
Thank you.
great. Very much appreciate you being on and being our special guest.
Yes, and it was good to see you again, Dustin.
Yeah, good to see y'all too, and it's been my pleasure. And I mean, just because this town hall's come to its natural conclusion does not mean that if you don't have your own burning questions or concerns, you can always reach out to me. You can reach me on Facebook. You can go to greatstateparanormal.com. I have my email listed. You can email me directly that way. So if there's anything I can ever do to help any of you guys, more than welcome. Just reach out and let me know.
Great.
Thank you, Dustin.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. And thanks everyone for joining
All right.
tonight.
Thank you, Bill.
All right,
So everyone,
Yes.
take
See
care.
everyone next time. Thanks.
Yeah.
we'll talk to you
Bye.
soon. Have a good night.
You
Bye.
guys.